The agenda is the Marawi compensation. I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2420.
2420. Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration is in order.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Before I recognize the sponsor, I'm also a principal author of this. We're appealing to our colleagues. It's the winding down of this administration. And the fact of the matter is, when you go to Marawi and Lanao Sur, many of our kababayans there are still without homes. They still have no way of being able to renovate and rebuild the homes that were destroyed during the siege. And they really earnestly appeal to us to help them with this compensation fund. And we also appeal to our colleagues that it's a very small amount, it's not a large amount. And it's really to give social justice as well to those, unfortunately, who were victims of the terrorism that had taken siege of Marawi City. So with that, as an opening statement, Mr. President, may I recognize Senator Sunny Angara to sponsor the measure. And we don't have any one actually listed to interpolate. But we'd like to recognize the sponsor if he has anything else.
Senator Sunny Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just would like to second everything the distinguished majority leader said. And I see Senator De La Rosa, who is the chair of the Marawi compensation, and Senator Bongo. Between the three of them, they really are the ones pushing for this bill. And I am just a messenger, Your Honor, and hopefully I will be able to answer. Of course, Senator Risa, I forgot. I see her also online. She's also very adamant in pushing this bill. She has a few amendments that she will propose. Mr. President, I see the minority leader raising his hand. Perhaps he has some questions.
Senator Drilon, the minority leader, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if the good sponsor can yield the floor to for a few questions, we are in support of the measure. Indeed, the rehabilitation of Marawi because of this unfortunate episode is something that is due to our brethren and to our brothers and sisters in Muslim Mindanao. But may I ask, will the bill, since it is principally budgetary bill, in other words, the bottom line is that we must appropriate funds. Would the funds, I assume the funds will be included in the General Appropriations Act, and that for the General Appropriations Act of 2023. Is that a correct assessment, conclusion, sir?
That's correct, Your Honor. The appropriations provision just provides reference to the General Appropriations Bill. So there is no specific appropriation for the compensation board, but there is a item for Marawi compensation under the disaster fund, if I'm not mistaken. That has been there since a few years ago. So for 2023, of course, we will work on that going forward, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Yeah, just so our constituency might be misled into believing that there is already an appropriation in this measure. That is not the case. Yeah, is that correct, sir?
No. It's like our other legislation. It is not self-contained in that sense. No, it's always referring to the GAA, Mr. President.
Yes. Yes. So this serves as the legal basis for the appropriation in the General Appropriations Act for 2023 and the subsequent years. Is that correct, sir? Just for the record.
That would be correct, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all the clarificatory questions I would wish to raise for the record.
Thank you very much to our distinguished minority leader.
Minority leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, I'd like to thank the minority leader. When I called him about this measure, he said the people there also deserve this compensation measure, and we'd like to thank him for that, for his support of this measure, Mr. President. With that, I move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is closed.
President, I move to open the period of amendments and recognize our colleagues for amendment.
Senator Angara is recognized. Were any amendments?
Yes, Mr. President, if it's all right with Senator Risa, we've already, I think, our staff have already discussed her amendments. Does she want me to read them, or she's free to read them and I can accept them as we go along? It's her pleasure, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Originally, I was earlier going to interpolate, pero dahil napaka-grasyoso po ng sponsor to make way for some of my proposed amendments, hindi ko na po ituloy. So, good sponsor, if you could read my proposed amendments as part of your committee amendments, I would be grateful.
Yes, certainly.
Salamat,
Certainly.
Mr. President.
And we thank the lady from Panay for her help on this bill. I have no doubt her amendments are improving the measure filed by the majority leader and Senator Bato and Senator Go. Thank you, Your Honor. So if I can begin, Mr. President, the first amendment is on page 5 after line 7 to insert a new paragraph to read as follows. The heirs of those who died and legally presumed dead are also entitled to compensation in accordance with the requirements under this act, its implementing rules and regulations, and other applicable laws, rules, and regulations. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Next, Mr. President, on page 6, after line 4, to insert a new paragraph to read as follows. The Bangsamoro government and the national government shall ensure the protection of the rights of the victims of the siege and undertake programs for their rehabilitation and development. Period. The Bangsamoro government, in coordination with the national government, the local government units where these IDPs are located, and the appropriate national government agencies, shall ensure continued access to livelihood assistance, skills and training programs, loan assistance, and other related activities to assist the recovery of lost income streams of businesses affected by the Marawi siege. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 6, line 8, after the word compensation, to insert the following sentences to read as follows. The OCD, in coordination with the TFBM, shall update the PCNA report within 3 months after the effectivity of this act for purposes of assessing the degree of damage and present the actual or estimated valuation of such damage to each structure caused by the siege and implementation of MRRP, period. In updating the PCNA report, the agency should also consider additional information from the post-siege social cartography activities of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources and information on the damages and losses incurred from areas that have become accessible only after the mitigation of security threats. New paragraph, the updated PCNA report shall produce information to be used in assessing replacement cost for residential and commercial structures, programming housing sector interventions commensurate to the updated needs, and in designating livelihood asset restoration and assistance projects roughly proportionate to the losses. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 6, after line 12, to insert a new subsection D and E to read as follows. D, in consonance with the compensation provisions of RA number 10752, structure owners who built on land not belonging to them or on land being claimed by other parties shall also be compensated for the damage sustained as a result of the siege, provided that unresolved disputes as to the true owners of the land shall not affect the entitlement to compensation of owners of structures damaged or demolished during the siege and as a result of post-siege actions of the government, period. Letter E, compensation for land and or damaged or demolished structures under this act and under RA number 10752 shall not disqualify persons from participating in the government's socialized housing programs. For the purpose of this section, all government programs for which corresponding benefits have been granted to the claimants shall be deducted from the total amount of compensation to be awarded under this act. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Risa. On page 7, line 4, to delete the word "and." So move.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
On page 7 as well, on line 7, to delete the quotation marks and replace and insert the word "and," Mr. President.
Page 7.
Page 7, line 7.
Wala namang quotation marks doon. What version are you looking at?
I'm just reading what was given to me, Mr. President, so I'm a little confused also.
Page 7, line 7 is of law for at least 5 years in words and numbers.
Just give me 1 second, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Delete the period, Mr. President. It's the period. that
Right.
needs to be-
Session
not the
resumed.
quotation marks.
Delete the period and,
Replace with the word "and."
all right.
So move, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Adopted. Because you're doing with the letter D. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Anything
On
else?
the same
Yeah.
page 7, after line 7, to insert a new subsection D, to read as follows. Two representatives of civil society organizations, at least one of whom is either a Sharia lawyer or a Muslim traditional leader. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 9, line 16, after the word COA, to insert the phrase 3 years from the time it was organized and the final special audit. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Ninth Amendment, Mr. President, thank you. On page 10, line 1, after the word siege, to insert the phrase "and the heirs of those who died and are legally presumed dead."
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 13, after line 6, to insert a new paragraph to read as follows. To protect the interests of claimants whose compensation has not been awarded without their fault, the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development shall continue to exercise the powers and functions of the board to disburse and process any and all pending compensation due to qualified claimants pursuant to the criteria set by the board, period. For this purpose, the assets, properties, and funds of the board shall be transferred to the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, on page 1, going back, I think this is the short title, if I'm not mistaken. To delete the figure 2021 in line 2 of page 1 and replace it with 2022. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Mr. President, now we go to the title of the bill on page 1. After the word properties, to insert the phrase "and loss of life" in the title. I so move, Mr. President.
Loss of lives.
Yes, that is an improvement, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. The loss of lives as a result. Okay. Any objection? Hearing none, adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those are the amendments of Senator Risa, and we thank her once more for her diligence in proposing these amendments and in her concern for our mga kababayans of Senator Bato, Senator Migs in Mindanao. Salamat po sa kanya. And Senator Coco, of course, also.
Majority Leader.
Alhamdulillah, Mr. President. Praise be to God. We're so happy for the people of Marawi. We passed this today. We thank all our colleagues, together with Senator Marcos, who was with us in that hearing, together with
That's
Senator
right,
Bongo.
that's right. Yes, Senator Marcos, Senator Joel, Senator Sherwin, Senator
Senator
Nancy.
Joel, Senator Sherwin, Senator Nancy, of course, Senator Bato, who led the panel.
Senator Go. Senator Go was also instrumental.
Opo, Senator Bongo. And we'd like to thank all of them, and inshallah we can find this law properly implemented by the national government. We really like to thank them, Mr. President. You know, I was the one, if you can remember, Mr. President, I was the one who went up to your podium when I was the first to hear about the Marawi siege. When there were pictures being sent to me by my colleagues and friends in Marawi of armed men coming in. I remember that day very clearly.
Yes.
That was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I had whispered to your ear and I said, "Boss, nagkakagulo sa Marawi. There are bandits and Abu Sayyaf and terrorists that have Jamaya Islamiyah taking over." So,
Mr. President,
It's
if I may,
circle.
with the permission of the Majority Leader, I'd also like to remind people that the Majority Leader is the father of the Bangsamoro Bill. So this explains his deep concern for our kababayans in Marawi.
thank you very much, Senator Sani. That is absolutely correct. It is the reason why we pushed the Bangsamoro Organic Law because of the siege. Because we saw that if we do not address the concerns of social justice, of a just and lasting peace, this would happen in other cities. This could have happened also in Zamboanga City, other cities later on, if we do not address the concerns of our brother and sister Muslims in Mindanao. And I thank our dear colleagues who are all here today. They're all online. They're with us. And because of the siege and the big issue on terrorism, we all pulled together as one body, the Senate, both minority and majority, without any political color, to pass, I would say, one of the more difficult measures that this chamber has passed, but I would say one of the best that we have passed, because we have put so many game changers, particularly on the management and the governance of the autonomous Muslim regions of Mindanao. And to be honest about it, I think they're doing a very good job. I was told that it's for the first time, maraming pera daw yung BARM. Hindi katulad ng dati sa ARM, mabilis maubos yung pera. Paglabas ng pondo, labas ka agad. Ito, maraming pera dahil ingat po sila gumastos. They're very careful about spending it. They're very careful about people's images of them on their reputation. And right now, I've seen in many of my colleagues and the members of parliament there, the pages are filled with projects being built, municipal buildings, daycare centers, health centers. Gone were the days where only the beautiful building was owned by the mayor and the politician, and everybody else were living in shacks. Now there are very major, several projects being built in these areas. So I'm going to move now, Mr. President, to close the period of amendments. And I thank all our colleagues for that.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments closed. Just curious, is there a counterpart bill in the House of Representatives?
We'd like to
yes,
ask
Mr.
Senator.
President, I think it has passed already. Oh.
Very good.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So with that, I move to approve on second reading. Senate Bill number 2420. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill 2420 is approved on second reading.
Congratulations po at mabuhay po ang Marawi City. Hopefully, they can move forward. Thank you very much, Senator Angara, Senator Bato de la Rosa, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator Coco Pimentel, Senator Villar, our Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Tolentino, who was with us also in the trip, if you can remember, and of course, our dear Minority Floor Leader. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader, and to our dearest colleagues. Salamat po.
Salamat po. Moving forward, Mr. President,